Nos vamos sentando, por favor, que arrancamos enseguida.
We're just about to start, ladies and gentlemen.
Bueno, buenas tardes a todos.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome again. I hope you've enjoyed this break, the 2-hour lunch break. This is the first session of Madrid Platform, the hub between Europe and Latin America. Now, you know there's an official hashtag. It's hashtag Madrid Platform. So please do feel free to send messages onto the social media and all of the meetings, this one, which is the auditorium. And now we've carried out some disinfection work in this room. Democrats have ensured that the COVID protocol has been respected. And now we have the international mobility discussion now, and we're going to look at it from an entrepreneurial point of view. Now, with regards to standards, sustainability, and so before we have our first round table, then I'm very pleased to be able to invite Ismail Aznar, who is the Director General of Environmental Quality and Environmental Evaluation within the Ministry of the Ecological Transition. And I'd like you to applaud him as he comes to the stage, please. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, thank you very much to the organizers for inviting the Ministry of the Ecological Transition to take part in this roundtable on sustainable mobility. It's a very interesting subject for our ministry, and I think we'll be able to show you this in a moment. Now, as you know, this has been a very strange year, where, for the reasons you all know, for concerns about health, have taken the center stage for all of our citizens and the public authorities. Now, things are looking better, and we are very aware of the link that there are between environmental quality and citizens' health. And so within the context of the crisis, we have also focused on the need to get our cities back. When there was the confinement and the lockdown, we all noted that the air quality had improved in our cities. And we had to walk more. It was better for us. We could take bikes. And this allowed us to appreciate that other ways of traveling are possible, and they're more healthy. Now, ideally, this would not be provoked by the causes such as the pandemic, but this has at least allowed us to think about how to make our cities more healthy and on a more acceptable scale. Now, another aspect is the digital aspect. This is something that's been repeated from the European Union with the Next Generation funds. This is a message that all the public administrations are pushing forward as well. And we know that the projects and initiatives have helped us and will help us to overcome the economic crisis that followed the health crisis. And so this is for us to reduce polluting emissions, such as greenhouse gases, for example. And so within all of this equation, we find, at the very heart of it, we find mobility. We want a healthier environment for our citizens. We want to overcome the economic crisis, which encourages an ecological transition, and we want to try and give cities back to their residents so that they can enjoy their environment, and it's a healthier environment. And so the public authorities are working in a context where we're trying to put these changes in place. This very week, on Thursday, there will be a discussion on the law on the ecological transition to be discussed by Spanish MPs. And there are some very ambitious objectives in this law. We want to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 23% by 2030, which means that 1 in 3 of our tons of carbon dioxide equivalent have to be eliminated, which is a substantial challenge. And so if we then look at 2050, we're aiming for carbon neutrality. And this means that the emissions generated by our economy is not greater than the capacity of that can be absorbed by that same economy. And the ideal would be for these emissions to be absorbed by forests. Now, we are focusing on a transformation in our economic energy model. And within our law, we want 5 million electric vehicles on the streets by 2030 in Spain. And we also want to extend the network of charging points for electronic vehicles, and particularly fast charging points. And we're also aiming to put in place tools to reduce emissions in cities of more than 50,000 people, where the air quality is poor. So to achieve this, there needs to be sustainable transport policies, and it doesn't only just require electronic vehicles or electric vehicles. We're also, now within my ministry, we're working with our colleagues in the Ministry of Transport and the Ministry for Urban Issues, and we're working on a law for sustainable mobility and public transport, which will set out the groundwork for this new mobility. And this would involve walking, taking the bike, electric transports, and also the use of public transport, and having public transport as an alternative to private transport. Here in this roundtable, with the speakers who are here with us, we're going to talk about mobility, the transformation, with shared vehicles, electric vehicles, but we also have very clear in our minds is that there needs to be fewer cars, more space for people. We need less congestion, which will make cities more pleasant to live in. I also want to mention the aids and helps assistance that is being put in place by the government. So to transform homes, for example, and one of the aspects of this plan does refer to transport. And this will help. This financial assistance will help us to bring the private sector in to help to achieve these goals. So the administration and the government are using this next generation funding from the European Union as well, because this is a key to our ecological and sustainable transition in mobility. We know it's not just a demand from our citizens, but it's also required for us to achieve our environmental goals. But it's also an opportunity. It's an opportunity for companies who have seen that there is a business opportunity in transforming cities and transforming transport. Spain is the second largest producer of electronic vehicles, and it's not a coincidence that the first aspect of the government's approach refers to electric vehicles, supporting the development of batteries. We know that this is the road to take. We want to go in this direction, and we want to do everything that we can so that the change in model takes place here in Spain. And to achieve this, then we need to work with the administrations, with companies, so that everything can be shared. There are many opportunities associated with mobility, and as I said in the roundtable, we're going to talk about some of these aspects, and no doubt the discussion will look at these opportunities for growth and for the creation of employment. Now, just before I conclude, I am the Director General of Environmental Quality and Environmental Evaluation, and I'd like to talk about air quality. When we talk about the ecological transition, we often talk about the social aspects of climate change and global warming, because these are the most visible in the public agenda. But we mustn't forget the question of air quality, which is associated with climate change and with the greenhouse gas emissions, because this means that we need to reduce pollution. And if we are going to create a healthy city for our citizens, then we have to improve the air. Many millions of early deaths are caused by air pollution and the poor quality of the air. And at the moment, the European Union is about to revise the air quality standard. This will be done on Thursday as well. And the standards for vehicle emissions and for air quality are going to be revised. And also the CO2 standards, and which in terms will lead us to a fleet of vehicles on our roads which are completely emissions-free. We also are looking at the air quality issue here in Spain. We've launched an initiative to examine the different standards of air quality that we have in our country. We have a framework plan that we're putting in place for air quality. And we need to be able to inform citizens when the air quality is improving or when it's very poor. And in the law, all cities with more than 50,000 people in them will have low emission areas. And our goal is to set out some guidelines so that we can ensure that these low emissions areas are actually created. And this will reduce emissions on greenhouse gases. And we're working with our colleagues in the Health Ministry for an environmental health plan, which we hope to present this year, later this year, and which will illustrate the link between the health of citizens and the environmental aspects, and how we can, by improving the environment, the quality of air particularly, this will help to improve the health of our fellow citizens. So I'd like to conclude here. Thank you once again for having the honor of opening this afternoon's session. I'd really like to emphasize that in these mobility aspects, transformation of our vehicle fleet is essential, and the only thing we can do is move forwards with this goal. And we need to be able to seize this opportunity, because this is a really critical moment. The time is now. We have to do this now. And this will benefit our economy, and this will benefit our fellow citizens. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much, Ismael. And now we're going to move on to this first roundtable this afternoon. So I'm going to invite the following people to come to the stage, please, and take the seats from left to right, please. So first of all, please applaud on the ecosystem of New Urban Movilidad. We have Jon Cuevas Mons, who is the CEO of Wondo. Thank you. Javier Mateos, who is the CEO of Ziti. Elena Fernandez, who is the Subdirector of Sustainability and Research and Development for Correos, the Spanish Postal Service. Juan Luis San Pedro from Skybus. Mariano Silveira, who is the VP for Public Affairs for Cabify. It's a pleasure to have you with us. And the moderator, Andres Camacho Donizar, who is the Director of Mobility for Ferrovial. Thank you. Hello, good afternoon, everybody. We're allowed to take off our masks. So, mobility is changing. I think that's a fact. There's a series of trends. They're sociological, technological. In the industry, we can see that there's a complete change underway. And there are new business models that have emerged, new technologies that are changing the panoply of offers for mobility. And in Madrid, we are a bit of a laboratory. We have lots of new businesses present here. And we're going to talk about some of these with the guests that we have here. First of all, we're going to talk about business models. And then we're going to look at what Ismael mentioned earlier, what impact they have on sustainability, these different models, and whether they will help to reduce congestion, improve air quality, for example, in the city of Madrid. So if you don't mind, I'm going to start with in the order in which you are seated. So, first of all, Jon Cuevas Mons, who is the CEO of Wondo. Wondo, could you tell us more about it, please? Yes. I'd like to tell you what it means, because it is a platform which includes public and private transport options within the same app. So you can have access to all of the different transport and mobility aspects available in one city. So you don't have to go into each individual app. You have a sort of umbrella app. And it's really to offer an alternative to private vehicles. So we're offering a packet of services. But we know that a private car is expensive, between 3,000 to 6,000 euros a year spent on your vehicle, between the petrol, the fuel, the garage, the parking, etc. So we thought we have these new solutions for mobility, such as car sharing or the scooters. And if we included these with public transport all in the same platform, then maybe we could create a more personalized and efficient service. And then this would make for a more sustainable transport system, because these vehicles are mainly electric vehicles. Now, Javier Mateos, you are the CEO of Ziti. This is a car-sharing platform. I think we're all familiar with the idea of car sharing. What's special about Ziti? Well, we have an excellent product, which is 400,000 users here in Madrid. It's a service which has 700 cars that are 100% electric. We have another 500 in Paris. And so the car sharing is always being compared to a private car. But on a daily basis now, you can use car sharing here in Madrid, And we have a platform which we've developed in-house and which gives a client experience from A to Z and which is constantly being improved. We adapt to the needs of our users, and we will help them to go from A to B as easily as possible. And it's not just the vehicle and the autonomy, but also the experience with the app. And I think the great advantage that we have to have Renault working with us, the car maker, is that we have huge amounts of independence because we have allowed the cars can be hired and used in the entire region around Madrid and not just in the Madrid capital area. So we spent 3.5 years developing our project, and we've just launched financial service which will assist our users within the platform. So there's a credit card, for example, and we're offering solutions that go beyond simply mobility with Zity. Thank you. Now, if we move slightly, we were talking before about moving people. You don't move people, you move objects, because you're the subdirector of Correos, which is the Spanish postal service. So there's been lots of developments with postal services, particularly with COVID, and now going the last mile with parcel services, for example. So our vision of mobility has 4 areas to it. We want sustainable mobility, intelligent, smart mobility, local mobility, which will reduce emissions as well, and conscious mobility. And what we're supporting is electric vehicles. We're also focusing in designing more efficient postal routes. We're also encouraging local consumption. When we buy things in Asia, even if the item is small, it's 25 times more emissions than if the item was bought in Spain. And we also want to encourage this idea of locality and draw attention to the impact, the environmental impact of our decisions as consumers when we're thinking about climate change. And if we look at the last mile, our goal is to reduce travel and as much as possible. We have a network of lockers with more than 5,000 lockers in Spain now. And with these networks, we can reduce the number of times a journey has to be made before a parcel can be received. We also offer a service which is called Modify, and which allows you to change the delivery address because, for example, you might not be at a home, so you can change the address. And we would like there to be coordination so that you can tell the post person where to deliver the parcel. After COVID, do you have an idea of the percentage of trade, the increase in trade for parcel delivery? Yes, there was a substantial increase in e-commerce, for example, and there's many different business models. And we are trying to capture as many clients as possible. But yes, the demand has risen. And so when demand is high, then supply also increases, obviously. Thank you. Juan Luis, he's the CEO of Skybus. Could you maybe tell us what Skybus is all about, please? Yes. I'd like to thank you for inviting me to be here today. In just a few words, let me say that Skybus is a bus that will take you from your home to your work. That's the objective. And it's a very simple concept. You go into the Skybus network, and you say where you're from and where you want to go. So I was saying, I live in Leganés, for example, on the outskirts of Madrid. And I go into the app, and I want to go from point A to point B at this time, and the app will decide on the route, and it will take you from your home to your destination. And these are minibuses with just 6 people, and we'll find 6 people that want to go on a similar route to you, and you can take the bus with them. Now, let me explain what the advantages are of Skybus. First of all, it's shared transport. So in one vehicle, there'll be up to between 5 and up to 50 people. Depends on the number of people that want to take the journey. And what you have to try and visualize is the more people that go in one of our Skybuses means fewer vehicles on the street. Secondly, we're optimizing routes. They're not fixed routes. These are routes that are adapted according to the demand. So we keep on adding in extra pick-up and drop-off points so that we can modify the routes. So it's a very efficient form of transport. And so it's not the same usage that you would use with traditional buses. Thirdly, we're optimizing flows. So the size of our vehicles is adapted automatically to the number of users. So if there's only 5 users, we only send a minibus with maximum 10 places, for example. So we have a heterogeneous fleet, a varied fleet of vehicles, and we can optimize the costs and the costs of the service because we're using the most appropriate vehicle. And it's a smart solution because our clients are companies, and they save a lot of money. Their users save a lot of time, and the operators save on kilometers and therefore can reduce their costs and reduce their emissions. So in a sense, it's a smart solution. And the last feature is that this is a metropolitan transport solution. The idea is to connect areas within cities that are maybe not well covered by the public transport network. And so it's a complement to the public transport network. And we're providing new connections in areas where there are no public transport. And so this is a very efficient complement. And I think, lastly, it's a very successful plan. We're doubling our users every 4 months. Our users are very happy. The corporate clients are very happy. And this is really gaining in speed. Thank you very much.
What happened is that there aren't a lot of people in the offices. But this increases security from the point of view of the pandemic and of infection. Why? Well, because the vehicles are not that packed. We apply very rigorous protocols of disinfection and of social distancing, and that gives peace of mind to many people. This is one of the reasons why we have been able to grow despite the pandemic. Now we have Mariano, who is the VP of Public Affairs of Cabify. Cabify is a very well-known company. It was born as a ride-hailing platform, but today it is much more than that. Could you, Mariano, define what Cabify is today? Yes, of course. First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me. It is a pleasure to be here. And yes, certainly what you said is that the original idea is, well, still the same one that we have today, because the challenge has not been overcome, and we're far away from overcoming it. But 10 years ago, because in fact, Cabify will be celebrating its 10th anniversary this year. But back then, we saw how difficult it was to get from point A to point B in our city itself, whether it was because of work or leisure in some of our cities. a lot of people use their own cars a lot, and we all know very well that it sometimes makes no sense to have a 2-ton vehicle of 5 spots when you only use one of those spots most of the time. At least 3 to 5% of the time it's when you use the entire vehicle. Even the European Union has produced reports that talk about 800 trillion euros of externalities of the impact of the use of private cars. So we need to do something about that, or we needed to do it back then. That's when Cabify decided to use technology to offer alternatives of mobility. First of all, when we were created, we were a VTC, but then we included taxis. In fact, now we're present in more than 100 cities in Spain and Latin America, and we work with VTCs and with taxis. So we've been growing in both alternatives. We are always looking to simplify the user's experience. In addition, we offer you the possibility to get a ride, but also we offer you the possibility of using motorcycles, car sharing, bicycles, and skateboards or scooters, because we think car sharing is a good alternative too. And thinking of what Elena said during the pandemic, we got very creative and started using our own structure of vehicles and mobility alternatives to transport parcels as well in that last mile. And we're doing well with that. But mostly it's been making the experience easier and more convenient so that people don't have to depend on their own vehicle, because it has its implications. In addition, we want to be sustainable. In our case, we understand sustainability in a very particular way. In 2018, we were the first carbon-neutral platform, and we still are. So what we do is that we analyze and compensate the hundreds of millions of trips that are done around the world. And the idea is not only to compensate. We want to stop emitting, but for that we need other partners. Our idea of sustainability is that each trip's impact has to be as low as possible. And in addition, we want to have a positive impact in the communities and societies where we operate. We're very proud of that. We're very proud of our team. And we're very proud to keep contributing to improve mobility. Thank you, Mariano. I'm going to pick up this issue of sustainability. You talked about externalizations and multi-trillion-dollar costs that no one pays in Europe. We all pay them, in fact. So now I would like to ask you specifically about sustainability. What do you think your business does to improve sustainability in a large sense in our cities? Once again, I would like to ask Jon first. How does your platform, which is a digital platform, help reduce traffic jams in the city? Well, I think that, first of all, it's because most of our vehicles are electric vehicles. But another important thing about platforms that Cabify is doing as well is that they bring together all these services and have a multimode proposal, meaning that you can have multimodal trips. For example, you can start with a bus and then do the last mile with a skateboard or a bicycle, or take first do the car sharing and then use the bus for the last miles. And those alternatives don't exist now, because now what you have to do is buy a ticket for the bus and then buy a ticket for another form of transportation, and you cannot reserve the car sharing an hour or less than an hour before. So there's still some work to be done there. You need a multimode planner so that you can see which type of services you can include in that trip, so you can get from point A to point B. That is going to be an important contribution for traffic and traffic jams. Moreover, this is something that people don't think of now, this integration of public transportation, because the bottom line is that public transport is the spine of urban mobility. Well, there are many options now in Spain. Where do you think the industry is headed? I think that is a very good question, because I think that in the end we're all together in this. First, the idea was the platform and the multimodal value proposal, but now we are all seeing that, for example, Cabify is using public transport, as well as in the United States, where we're seeing that implementation. So really, for the user, what is going to have more success is the proposal that has more sense for the user. Then there are platforms that integrate public transportation more so than others. Some others are more centered on private transportation. Then some platforms will be local, some others will be worldwide. We'll see what the evolution is. I think in any case that the evolution is going in this sense. 6 months ago or 8 months ago, it was already said by the CMV that we're on the path of better mobility. Mariano was saying that they look at their carbon footprint. But do you measure the impact that City has in terms of sustainability? Well, sustainability can have many phases, but from the environmental perspective, our fleet, yes, we have avoided more than 5,000 tons of carbon emissions that have not been emitted. We have interiorized environmental sustainability. Iberdrola is our strategic partner. They help us provide energy for our vehicles, and this energy has a certificate for being 100% renewable. I think that Jon said that a keyword is efficiency, using resources efficiently, whatever the resource might be. We are constantly working on efficiency in City, whether it is from an environmental point of view or from the streamlining of the resources that we have available and that are being underused and that that have to be used collectively so they are more rational and we can free some space in the cities. There is a clear guideline in climate change directives that says that we need to remove vehicles from the center in the city and we need to free it up so that pedestrians can have more room. And car sharing is great for this. We remove vehicles that are parked 95% of their time, and instead we replace them with a fleet that is more sustainable, that uses a 95% sustainable source of energy. I think sustainability is everywhere, from how a vehicle is designed to the way each one of these vehicles is used. And why not? Like John says, sustainability also has to do intermodality and interconnectivity and sharing trips, sharing journeys. I think it all adds to being more efficient in the way you go from point A to point B. We've been talking about the use of public space. A car-sharing business removes cars that are parked and it gives space back to the city. Elena, in the case of e-commerce, we citizens are beginning to see vehicles parked in a double line. I think you're aware of the problem, and I'm not saying it is that you caused that problem. I think that many operators are being part of that problem. But how do you think you could relieve this problem? Are you aware of it? Are you doing anything about it? What do you think other operators could contribute to improve this jungle? It is indeed a jungle. It's what I was saying before. Demand and supply have increased in a very significant way. So as a public or private companies, we need to see how we give a response to this complex challenge. Transport companies are not the only problem. We cannot think of it just that way, but it also has to do with the way we conceive mobility. We have many possible solutions, but not everyone has jumped on the bandwagon. We are promoting an intelligent mobility, trying to optimize routes. We also are trying to raise awareness because we all want to have our deliveries in 24 hours, but if we can wait 72, emissions and air quality improve. I think that's one of our key concerns. We have hundreds of electric vehicles that use renewable energy, and we have 11,000 people that make deliveries on foot. They are the ones who cover that last mile. Our 2030 objective is to be carbon neutral, and that at least 50% of our fleet uses alternative sources. We also want to support the circular economy and local value. So I think that responds to the first question you made. What are you doing, not only in terms of the environment? And this is what we're doing. We're aware that our activity has an impact on the environment. We're trying to compensate all the emissions of the deliveries hired through our offices. We haven't compensated 100%, we haven't reached that level, but the idea is to reduce emissions to the max. Our product portfolio has a triple dimension. We need income, certainly, but we also think of the environmental and social impact that our products have. For this reason, we have developed a green package, and there is a percentage of our income that is destined to reforestation in Spain. We also have another service called Correos Market, trying to promote local commerce and local purchases. There is another solution for SMEs that allows them to have a digital store or a digital replica of their stores so that the customer can go by foot or can access them virtually. Now, there are areas in which the concentration of population is important, but then there are others in which people have to travel 50 kilometers in order to maybe do some paperwork, some official paperwork. So we're also trying to provide a solution for this kind of chores or of paperwork. Yeah, sometimes it looks like it's transportation companies who are the bad guy in the story, but then it's citizens who make the decisions. And sometimes we don't know what having all these services available means. Yes, the post office has 53,000 employees, and one of our big challenges is not only the mobility of packages, but also our employees' mobility. Their mobility implies more than 40% of the emissions produced by Correos, by the National Post Office. So the challenge is quite large. Now, when companies talk about sustainable products and having a positive environmental and social impact, we need to reflect on the entire value chain. Scope 3 is very important for us, and we need to work on it. Well, this is a problem that Juan Luis has fixed. I was going to ask you, Juan Luis, about corporate mobility. You know the historic evolution, but back in the day when you were an employee, one of your big aspirations was to have a company car. Juan Luis, have you seen a change, a shift, an evolution in this regard? I think that without a doubt, this is changing. We started with this Skybus project maybe 10 years ago, and we've seen that in the last 4 years, companies have really become more aware and have taken on this responsibility. They have engaged with that. Not only because of social responsibility, saying it in abstract terms, but because there is a very clear economic return when they offer an alternative to their cars to get to work. Maybe if they find an office that is very well serviced by transport, and if they can pay cheaper rental, that is an advantage for a company. If a company is located in a place that it's hard to get to, that can have a very high impact. 15% more it can be. So for some companies, it is very appealing to offer their employees an alternative that is easy and that is cost-effective and cost-efficient. And many companies that are our clients have already bought into that idea. And I think they are leading with example. I think there is really an interest in improving that aspect of employees' daily life. I think this is changing, luckily, very quickly. Are you more present in large cities or in medium cities? Well, city or mobility problems seem to be higher in large cities. Medium cities have other mobility problems. But the problem that we are addressing, which is excessive traffic, waste of time and stress, happens mostly in large cities, both of developed countries, but more so in developing countries. Because the first thing that they are lacking is sufficient infrastructure. So the idea is to supplement the lack of infrastructures, of transport infrastructures, with cyber technologies or cyber infrastructures like City or Skybus. Because using technology, we can improve the mobility of people and merchandises, parcels. Mariano, you told us about the sustainability approach you have. It is true that there are reports for everything, but some reports, in the case of San Francisco, says that ride-hailing has actually worsened traffic in the cities. Some other people say it is an elitist way of moving or it's very individualistic. What is your opinion in this sense? Well, indeed, like you said, there are reports for everything. Most of them are biased. And it is not the same to produce a report analyzing a city in the United States, because the penetration of public transport there is basically non-existent. So in many cities, either you use a car or you use a car. So using a shared car instead of your own car has a certain improvement, but the impact is going to be different. I think that in Europe and in cities like Spanish cities, the situation is radically different. The bottom line is that there's 30 or 40% done in private vehicles. And to build an ecosystem of mobility with the stakeholders that are here with me and others that will come in the future to give an alternative of mobility. And in this case, ride-hailing and UVTC are the first alternative. The problem is that taxis have not known or have not managed to adapt to technology, and they're having a very hard time to do that change. But these alternatives they give a good experience. If we ask ourselves, why do we use our own car? We say, well, it's because it's there. And we think it's free, but no, we are paying 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 euros per year to own a car. But this convenience of having the car out there at your door, ready to use whenever you want, is very difficult to replace. But there has to be a way to bring users closer to other mobility alternatives. And when you bring the solutions closer, people start considering maybe not using their own car so much. And in the case of European cities, this is how people decide sometimes to leave their car at home and then use Cabify and then use Ziri and then use a bike and then use public transportation. And they become then a person who uses the mobility ecosystem in the city. Nonetheless, if you only have one alternative, this doesn't really solve the problem. So what we really focus on is the occupation rate, and when we measure them, we end up having lots of surprises. We say that the occupation rate of private vehicles is 3 to 5%. Taxis are used at 40%. Then taxi with technology, whether it's UVTC or taxis itself, but when they have a layer of artificial intelligence that brings them closer to the user, allows them to gain 20% points in efficiency, meaning that they reach 60% occupation rate. Most of the vehicles in that ecosystem, if they take care of their efficiency, then it is a good thing. Imagine, think of a bus that is almost never used. It's public transport, but it's not efficient. Sometimes we're too focused on only solving emissions as if they were our only problem. But we are still very green on how to use the mobility and the alternatives that we have in the system. We're very far away from being able to fully exploit all the options, the mobility options that we have. Public transport has to be at the core of a city's mobility, but we also need to improve other uses and other modes so that we don't have these gaps. For example, an occupation rate of 10% means that something is getting lost in the way, or that maybe we're wasting resources, or that we're arriving too late. We need to look for the improvement of those efficiency rates to move more people more efficiently. I can tell that you've answered this question many times before. No, it's just that there are several steps and we have to evolve, and the key is technology and innovation. If we don't have that, we'll keep being disconnected. The problem now is that supply and demand aren't disconnected, and that creates inefficiency, and it creates a barrier, which is that users do not leave their cars at home, and they don't want to use public transportation because they waste a bunch of time. The same happens with bicycles. Why in Amsterdam everyone takes their bike and not here? We think it's because it's too hot, or because of the slopes, but no, it's not that. It's just that the alternatives to solve mobility have not been sorted out. And really the only way is technology that tells you have to take this route, or you have to take another one, or you can use this parking lot, and it can be subscription. There are thousands of barriers that keep people from leaving their car at home and try other ways. But well, we are little by little making progress. Well, thank you very much. I think you've given us enough food for thought for another discussion. It would be fascinating what happens 10 years from now. Maybe if this is recorded and available somewhere, we can see each other, we can see ourselves, we can have a look back. We will be bolder perhaps in 10 years, but it'll be interesting to see how things have evolved. Thank you very much for being here. And thank you for participating.
Muchísimas gracias a todos, Andrés, por una
Thank
estupenda
you.
moderación.
Thank you,
Y
Andrés,
seguimos
for
en esta
your
sesión de la
wonderful
tarde.
moderation
Además,
of this
vienen
panel. Now we're going to keep going with the afternoon session. We are going to have very fascinating presentations where we're going to focus on some specific projects.
Estas compañías que acaban de ser protagonistas en este escenario. Creo que tenemos preparada además
I think
algún
we
elemento
have
audiovisual,
perhaps
compañeros.
a video ready, colleagues.
Vale, aprovecho para decir lo que está pasando. Efectivamente, es que somos unos cuantos ponentes a continuación también y están
Well, we have
cambiando
quite
el
a few
mobiliario,
speakers. They're
como
changing
todos
the
podemos ver.
furniture, as we can
En
all
este
see.
momento también me gustaría
Right
recordar,
now,
ya
I would
sabéis,
also like to remind
estamos en
you
redes sociales. De
that
hecho,
we're
estoy
on
cotilleando en
social
el
media, and
backstage, que
I'm
hay
having
muchísima actividad
a look
en
at
torno
this
a este
backstage,
hashtag
and I
oficial,
can see that
Madrid
we have a lot of
Platform, y os
activity
animo
on
a
our
continuar
official
así y a seguir
hashtag Madrid
compartiendo todo lo que
platform,
aquí suceda en esta primera jornada y a
so
lo
we
largo
can
de
talk about
las
everything that's
otras
been
dos que
happening
quedan, que
over
vamos a
this
compartir
first
juntos
day of
mañana
the
y
conference.
pasado.
We'll
Vamos
be
a dar,
here tomorrow and the following
exacto, me
also,
dicen
as
que ahora
you
sí.
know.
Vamos a dar paso, si
Now
os parece,
we are
a Timo
going to
Bietefisch, CEO de
hear
Cultra, lo he dicho bien.
from Timo
Muchísimas gracias,
Bietefisch,
un aplauso para él.
who is the CEO of Cultra. Thanks very much. Round of applause.
Vamos a ver si esto funciona.
Let's see whether this works.
¿Me podrías poner mi presentación? Ah, vale.
Okay,
Muy bien.
good.
Buenas tardes a todos.
Good
Mi nombre
afternoon
es
to
Timo,
all
soy
of you.
fundador y
I'm
CEO de
Timo.
Cultra,
I'm the founder and CEO of Cultra.
empresa líder en
We're a leading
Europa
company in
de
Europe.
soluciones de movilidad sostenible en dos ruedas.
We
Nuestra
work
oficina está en
on
Barcelona, pero operamos
two-wheeled
en más de 30
urban mobility.
ciudades.
Our
Gracias por
offices are
tenerme
in
hoy aquí.
Barcelona, but we're present in more than 30 cities. And thank you for inviting me. Now, when you look at this, this is exactly what we do not want for our cities. We don't want this future for our children, our future generations. We want cities that look like this, that are sustainable, that are green, that are optimized and technological. And I want to talk to you today about an issue I know about, not so much because of just knowledge of theory, but rather of practice. We have a warehouse where we have many, many of these vehicles in Barcelona. This is micromobility. We have scooters, e-bikes, and e-mopeds. We're very strong on e-mopeds, but since April of last year, we're also using free-float e-bikes in Barcelona. And I just wanted to share with you the four major trends that I see. Obviously, one is mobility services. Smartphones are the key to that. And then electrification. Very clearly, for me, the future is electric. It's silence, no emissions, no noise. And we also have the government support coming into question. Our governments are implementing more electric cities. But when we get down to actual practice, regulation becomes more complicated. Demographically, there's a lot of an urban trend. 56% of the population in Spain lives in a city. And for me, there's a clear trend towards light vehicles. Their advantage is that they take up less space. These are four of the main trends. I like this chart a lot because it shows us a bit about what we were talking about, multimodal. We have several different services, taxi, riding sharing, ride pooling, and all of them nearly have double-digit growth. That's the direction things are moving in. And we will probably have lots of different modes of transportation on these apps. What's very clear, this is a survey that I wanted to show with you. This is from Oliver Wyman. Here we have more willingness for micromobility. Things moved in phases, as Mariano mentioned before.
We had a first phase of shared mobility, but increasingly, both in Spain and in other cities and countries around the world, we have increasing willingness for people to use scooters, e-bikes, and e-mopeds. In 2020, these are figures from the Spanish market, 31% of Spaniards used bicycles, scooters, or motorcycles, which is 7% more than in 2019. So this is exponential growth. I think it's very, very significant. I'll explain the reasons later. And what's also interesting is that 42% of Spaniards have reduced their use, they did, at least last year, reduce their use of public transportation due to the pandemic. So another important figure, and if we compare with the rest of Europe, 44% of Spaniards use nearly on a daily basis mobile mobility applications, which is more than in other countries. That's very interesting. And the reasons, as you might imagine, that they use alternative systems. One, obviously, is because it's quick and easy. You don't need your own vehicle. And also because public transportation doesn't take you, or bicycles or these last scooters can take you that very last mile that you need to go, and they are good with the environment. And people also feel safer vis-a-vis COVID. So this leads people to be more inclined to use individual transport vehicles. This is a huge market. We're talking about $5 billion US, and this is huge. And I'll talk more about my market, which is shared mopeds. We started in 2016. We were the first in Barcelona, but look at how many operators we have now. There are 76 of them. This is a much, much more mature market. We have 104,000 shared mopeds throughout the world. So this is a sector that all of us together have created, and it's here to stay. This is the big news for all of us. Here, I have an analysis that I'm personally very proud of because it shows our leadership in moped sharing. Here you can see the different operators, the different fleets, and we're in third place with motor scooters in terms of fleets, but we're the most successful operator. And then we have, as you can see, on the green circles, in corporate, we have the number of times a day that these motorcycles rotate. And this is lower than in 2019, but it's still very positive for my company. And this, in my mind, is the path to profitability, shared mobility. It's one of our sacraments. Everybody wants to move towards profitability, and we're fighting to do that. And here we have some figures about our company. A lot of you know our company. We're in 6 different countries. We have about 400 employees, 16,000 scooters, and nearly 1.3 million euros. Now, this is very clear. It's been mentioned often. For us, it's part of our DNA. It's our sustainability. Sustainability is what is key for us. We need to get into cities and talk to the governments there. There are only positive externalities, actually. We have three different examples of the way our company is used. We have a professional fleet here. It's Domino's Pizza that's using it. They have nearly 1,000 mopeds in 4 countries, and for about the last 4 years, they have awarded us the entire fleet from A to Z. And we are working internationally on this. We have worked in different countries under franchises that use us. And this is also good because there are companies like Domino's Pizza. Well, sustainability is very important for them and their customers, and also their own clients find it important. People can know, the company can tell them that your pizza reached you sustainably. And we have a share and interest in this company called Eco-Scooting. This is B2B. We work for the largest e-commerce company in the United States and also in China. Through this company, we deliver more than 27,000 packages in Spain per day, always using electric vehicles. The sustainability, 8 or 9 years ago, we were pioneers at this, but it really helped us to gain appreciation. They didn't used to appreciate us as much as they do now. And now we have also very big vehicles here. These are zero motorcycles. They're from California. They have nearly 150 kilometers in autonomy. I am very pleased that the public administration is also going electric. For me, it's a good way to wrap up my presentation. Thank you very much, and we'll continue to work on sustainability. Thank you very, very much. Timo? And I think that we have something for the next speakers. I will ask Mr. Jon Cuervas Mons, the CEO of Wando. Rounds of applause for him. I'd ask him to please come up. Thank you.
Hola, ¿qué tal a todos?
Hi, how are you doing?
Bueno, ya me habéis visto antes, con lo que tampoco me voy a presentar otra vez.
You saw me before, so I don't need to introduce myself again. I'm going to touch upon a lot of things that we already dealt with at the panel, perhaps going into more detail. I'm going to start off with a question that a lot of times I wonder about myself, whether we're actually going to go back to the office when all of this is over, whether we all actually will do that. And my answer to this question is yes, because we did see that we can work from home, but I don't think that everything that glitters is gold. I don't think it's the answer to all of our problems. There are different arguments. There is a philosopher that discusses work and said that we did this test with colleagues who we already knew at work. It makes things easier because we actually used to be there in person with them and forged a relationship. So when you're between one meeting and another, you talk to your coworkers, you maybe find out about their parents or something personal, and you build a relationship with trust. And I think this is significant. Then there's a second important point that has to do with creativity. I think that over the course of this year, all of us have had the experience of going to a brainstorming meeting when everything is remote. And it's really difficult for us to co-create via remote. There's an interesting piece of research that was done at MIT. We've all heard about MIT, and a lot of teachers and students who interact saw what happened this year, whether things continued to work as they had worked before, or what the new interaction brought. And the result is that it went very poorly. Regarding innovation and projects, so the things have really gone down. We saw that this innovation, this creativity, has been diminished. Perhaps a few years ago we thought, well, Internet is going to decentralize innovation, and then we actually saw that very significant hubs like Boston and Silicon Valley and other places that centralized in a way. So I think that there is information that isn't conveyed. It's only conveyed in person. And then, if we think about companies and employees and how employees identify less with their companies, this is another finding. So, the new outlook, I think, will be hybrid. I don't think we're all going to go back to the office. We may be working from home 2 or 3 days a week, and at the office 2 or 3 days a week, and things will be a bit different in the office, more geared towards teamwork, towards creative work, and saving other things to do at home. So how would this all impact mobility, is what we would be asking ourselves, is a key question. Will we go back to cars? And let's see whether we can say, raise your hands, those of you who have always taken your private car to the office. Could you raise your hand? Oh, it's a very, very high percentage. We were talking about this before. Private cars, those of us who use this, are consuming between 6,000 to 7,000 euros per year because we have maintenance, the insurance, the fuel, and the car itself. 80% of the rides that we take are less than 10 kilometers. And there are other means that can cover those trips. And then there's the occupancy rate. We use those cars maybe 3–5% of the time, and the rest of the time they're parked somewhere. So we need to take a leap away from private cars. It's a major package of services that cover a lot of needs. It's simple for us to have a car because it covers a lot of needs. But you can think of scooters, car sharing, motor sharing, and public transportation. If we can put all of this on a single platform, and you can use several different means in a single trip, then that will be virtually as simple as the private car. And what I think is interesting is Whitman in Finland, in Helsinki, they were able to integrate all of these services in addition to car renting, but public transportation, metro, buses, car sharing, motorcycle or moped sharing, and bicycles. We were talking about simple access. It's like mobility Netflix, so to speak. You subscribe and you have more than just a bus. You would also include private vehicles. And then you've got car renting. And you can have perhaps a rental car at the weekends and other things you need during the week. This type of subscriptions can cover that. It's well envisaged. It's customized, and it's going to be less expensive than a private car. It's more economical. And this gets us back to multi-mode transportation. You may be able to take lots of different forms of transportation depending on where you're going. The only thing that you might need is a bus. Well, that's one thing, but if you have a package that covers all types of transportation, then you can offer people a greater choice, but of course it's more complex. But once we reach that stage, we'll be able to provide this real alternative to private cars. And this is where I wanted to introduce you to Wando. We have a new B2B app which is envisaged for companies and their employees. We have several different services on a platform, and we're trying to think of how we can help people with mobility take better care of our employees. And, well, this is how it works. We have taxis, we have moped sharing, car sharing, and you can do everything on this single platform. You can open the vehicle and close the vehicle at the end and take all of these forms of transportation. So this is an interesting value proposal. This is just to give you an idea of what the marketplace looks like. And then you can have a map so that you can see where the different vehicles are, which is the closest, instead of getting into each and every application and seeing where things are. They're all rolled into one. When a company decides to hire this, they are giving a beneficial package to their workers. This is a model where you could call the formula cashback. I think what's important for users also is that we're generating a user experience that's unified. You don't have to learn each and every one of the applications. There's a single application. It's a single user experience. And it's been enhanced vis-a-vis the individual applications. All mobility apps aren't that simple for their users. People are sometimes very familiar with technology and they get right into a car sharing or moped sharing app, but not everybody is on that wavelength. So we include everything in the app, including payment. You provide your data, you register, and you get access to all of these services, all in one. So just to conclude, know that we're out there on the market, and if you have human resource teams, they can get a 50% discount from now until the summertime. Things will be not only more economical, but also more sustainable. Thanks.
Thank you, John.
Thanks very, very much. Well, I'm going to sign up to that and get this discount. Now, lastly, I'm going to ask Arturo Pérez de Lucia, who is Director General of the AEDIVE. Let's hear a round of applause for him. Okay. Well, good afternoon, and thanks to the organization for organizing this. I'm here to talk to you about electric mobility. Let's see, it does seem to work, so I'll get into my presentation. Our association covers the industrial value chain, industry technology, and service, all in electric mobility. If you want to get to know us better, this is our website, www.aedive.s. So we've been talking about the revolution in the automotive industry. We know that there's an industrial, technological, and service revolution that's going to foster car sharing and automatic cars. Emissions, well, it's all very clear. We have two problems that we need to solve in environmental terms. One of them is CO2. These are generated by humankind. We have fires. There are people who might deny this reality. There are also people who think the world is flat, but this is unavoidable reality. And then we have another added problem, which is pollution. Our cars on the road in Spain are an average of 13 years old. More than 6 million of them are more than 20 years old, and they generate heart and lung disease very significantly. But we also have another type of pollution, which we don't talk about all that much, which is sound pollution. And this also leads to death. This is something that we need to be mindful of. And electric mobility addresses all of this. Now here, I think that we stand apart, because the electric vehicle is the only one that can work to store energy as well as doing the rest. So because it's the only system that can do all of this, it's going to be a pillar of energy efficiency. Let's talk about services. This slide has gone on and on, 30 years of mobile phones. We could look at more. We have mobile phones. Before, 100% of what we did was make and receive phone calls, and now we use them for online services. Sometimes, every once in a while, you also speak on the phone. So the technological revolution, generally speaking, is linked to service providing. And we're finding this in mobility and sustainable mobility. We had colleagues talking about shared mobility, as you can see on this slide. We have electric cars that we can see on our city streets increasingly. They're all zero emissions, all efficient electric vehicles. If we take a look at the ecosystem of the region of Madrid, not only the city, there are people who live outside Madrid that commute, and we're talking about urban and peri-urban. Well, we heard this before. If you have your own car, you need maintenance and operation. You have those expenses. And the car sharers merely pay to use the car. And so we're beginning to become more intelligent. Cars can no longer be the second most important purchase in our lives, but just simply a means of moving from point A to point B. We can use shared mobility services, even in addition to having our own vehicle sometimes. Spain is also a country that manufactures all sorts of vehicles, and they're all electric. And when you buy your own private car, generally speaking, until your children aren't fully grown, you don't go out and buy another car. But this model makes that more recurrent. Those purchases are more recurrent. Perhaps people couldn't afford to buy a new car, but via these services, they can afford to be riding or driving in a much newer car. And that means more road safety. These cars are new. They have the latest technology. They're decarbonized, and they generate local employment, as well as reducing the costs of mobility, people's cost of mobility. In Madrid, we have a board for electric mobility, and there are certain companies, City, Cultra, and others, and the objective of this board is to eliminate the older cars on the road. We provide incentives to scrap them, and those incentives go to shared mobility. Because if you give people credit to buy a new vehicle, you're not addressing the issue of congestion. But with this perspective, with these mobility service, you can help congestion. And we're working on this in the region of Madrid. We're going to make these initiatives well known. How or what would an ideal or intelligent city look like with electric cars? Well, you have two-wheel vehicles, four-wheel vehicles, we have scooters, we have vehicles that are entirely autonomous, different types of those vehicles. And we've developed drones that can fly, of course. We need to be aware of the fact that new mobility is going to be providing new services for us. We talked about Skybus, and I remember Mr. San Pedro from years and years ago. He was an innovator back then, and it was very surprising. It's been more than 10 years now. This is an innovative service that is meeting with a certain degree of acclaim. The reduction of mobility will be brutal. It'll be radically transformed, and we believe it's going to be highly based on electric vehicles. I just wanted to give you this perspective before I go. Without further ado, thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias, Arturo. No te vayas lejos porque
Thank you,
necesito que me
Arturo.
digas
Please
dónde has
don't go
conseguido
far
la
away
mascarilla que
because
traes.
I want you
Yo
to
soy
tell me where you
periodista
get your
especializada
mask.
en tecnología e innovación y
I am a
necesito saber dónde
journalist
has conseguido eso. Luego
specialized
hablamos, luego
on
hablamos.
innovation, and I want to know
Muchísimas
where you got your
gracias.
mask, your
Damos
face
paso,
mask.
como bien
It's
ha dicho
great.
él,
Thank you very
al
much.
panel de
We will
movilidad
now have
eléctrica,
our
perdón, y
panel
además es un
specialized in
diálogo
electric mobility.
entre
In fact,
Carlos
this is going to be
Berguera,
an exchange,
responsable
a
de
dialogue
relaciones
between
externas
Carlos
de
Berguera,
Smart Mobility
head
de
of
Iberdrola. Cuando
Smart
quieras, por
Mobility
favor, puedes subir al
Iberdrola
escenario. Un
External
aplauso para él.
Relations. You can come up to the stage, sir, please. Let's give him a round of applause.
Y Andrés
And
Camacho de Nézar,
Mr.
director de Movilidad
Andrés
de
Camacho,
Ferrovial.
Director
Aplauso
of
fuerte también para
Mobility for
Andrés.
Ferrovial. Let's give him a round of applause as well.
Hola, Carlos, ¿qué tal?
Buenas tardes.
Hello,
Andrés.
Carlos. Hello,
Voy a
Andrés.
empezar por presentarte, Carlos.
Well,
La presentación
I would like
Bueno, Carlos es
to introduce you, Carlos, first.
responsable de relaciones
Carlos
externas de Smart Mobility
is
en
responsible
Iberdrola,
for external relations of smart mobility in Iberdrola. He is an industrial engineer by training. He's been working with Iberdrola since the year 2000, and he has moved through different positions. He is also part of the board of directors of AIDEBE that Arturo just presented, the association that was just presented to us. He participates in different groups, associations, etc. Before joining Iberdrola, he was part of the local administration of the government of Navarra. So he has a wealth of experience. I would like to talk to you about electric mobility. In a country like Spain, a company like Iberdrola is a key actor in electric mobility. So the first question I would like to ask you, Carlos, to break the ice, is how do you perceive in Iberdrola the future of mobility? Very well, thank you to all of you, and thank you, Andrés. The way we perceive the future of mobility is as electric mobility, of course. We have all heard the reasons, which are many, but there is more. Electricity contributes to the fight against climate change, pollution in cities, and for these reasons it has many benefits in terms of efficiency. But that's not all. We also think it's a more appealing type of mobility because it's cool. And I think car brands are realizing this. So in a certain way, they are trying to get into this rising market. They have realized that people want electric cars, not only because we feel better, we feel that we are contributing to the cause that is important to us, but it is also more fun to drive an electric car. It brings you more satisfaction, it generates better feelings. And for this potential demand, brands are working on them. There are still some technological barriers and some points to be improved, but several brands are trying to make efforts to provide a better driving experience to their clients. This implies an opportunity for Spain because Spain is one of the countries in the world with greater development potential for electric mobility because we have an electric grid with high technology. This is one of the best grids in the world. This is an opportunity, and we have to make an effort to take advantage of it. What we have to do is to accelerate the transition. It is the future of mobility is obviously electric mobility, and we have everything we need in Spain to take advantage of it. So the strategic objective in Spain, like it has been said before by the Director of Environmental Quality, is to step on the accelerator of this transformation. That way we will generate more jobs, create more wealth, and promote the industry of mobility, because this transformation will create many jobs. In this transition, in this transformation, what do you think Iberdrola's role is going to be? Well, Iberdrola wants to be a facilitator of that change, and it cannot be any other way. Like you very well said, we have anticipated to this. I've had the privilege and the luck, thanks to Iberdrola and the opportunity they gave me, to be part of preparing our company for electric mobility. So we have been innovators in many things. We were the first electric company that created a department that worked specifically on electric mobility with a commercial business vision. Not only to do research, but because we wanted to provide solutions for our clients. Now, what else? We were the first one to install recharge electric points in Madrid and in Barcelona, by the way, to recharge Cultra motorcycles. We were the first one to be able to recharge the first car-sharing service in Spain, which was up in the town of Guipúzcoa. It was set up thanks to the initiative of the mayor over there. And we were able to provide the first car-sharing, electric car-sharing, the first electric bus that started to run in Spain, the first electric fleet of corporate cars, of company cars, was out of Iberdrola. The first electric fleet for an administration, which was in this case in Andalusia, was also serviced by us. So this allowed us to create the know-how, the expertise, and an infrastructure that is really at the base of the recharging services that we provide for our clients. So that has been our role, to accompany the transition into electric mobility, providing services for the array of solutions that are necessary for electric mobility to function. The recharge points, how many do we have? How many do we need? I think we're still behind. Indeed, we are. In fact, one of the necessary elements to facilitate electric mobility is infrastructure. And indeed, that is one of our main roles and commitments. Perhaps there is a number of things that wasn't done well. There was a figure called the recharge manager, and that was really a break for the development of infrastructure in Spain, because they really didn't allow for flexibility or freedom when it came to developing the infrastructure of recharge in Spain. And once that figure disappeared, then the infrastructure started to develop in an exponential way. We don't have a public mandate for developing public recharge. It is true that Spain doesn't have a very large fleet of electric vehicles, but we have around one recharge point for every 10 vehicles, electric vehicles in Spain. That is the standard. It is debatable if it's sufficient or not. This is where we're at, and evidently we need to both increase the amount of vehicles and the infrastructure. There are also some barriers. We will probably discuss that later. But in any case, both things must be promoted. They both need a boost. Both the amount of vehicles with a series of measures to make it more affordable and the amount of recharge point, or the infrastructure. Your vision for the future is to have a recharge infrastructure in streets in Spanish cities, or in private places, or at home, or in malls, in shopping centers, or how? What's your vision? Sometimes we forget that when a person owns a private electric vehicle, 80% of recharges is done wherever the car sleeps every day, or where the car is parked. This is what we call joint recharge. But obviously, when someone is thinking about buying an electric vehicle, they want to be sure that if they move around with their car, which is why they buy their car, even if they take longer trips, they want to be sure they'll be able to recharge their car. And that recharge is done in two main ways: recharging at your destination. So for that, in the urban area, if you go to the hospital, then you recharge it there. If you go to, I don't know, if you take your kids to school, you recharge. If you go shopping at the grocery store, then you recharge. Or if you go to a public parking lot in the center of the city because you're going to run some errands, and you're going to park your car for an hour or two, ideally, you would be able to recharge your car. Or maybe if you go to a hotel and spend the night there with your family, it would be ideal to be able to recharge your car there. Then there is a quick charging for your car. If you have used up your car's autonomy and you still need it to keep going because you need to keep driving, there should be some fast charge points, 10 or 15 minutes of high power recharge to keep working so that your car can keep running. Both types of recharge are important so that the user can gain confidence. And we're working on both possibilities. I think there is a series of technological challenges, but what's important is to offer a holistic solution. If a person purchases an electric car, they should be rest assured that they'll have a point of recharge at home, and then maybe have a solution, a flat fee or something, so that if they go to the city or take an interurban trip through an app, they can have access to the grid, and they can recharge their car, to the infrastructure that would allow them to recharge your car. The world of the electric sector is a regulated sector. You were talking about this role of recharge manager that really stopped the sector from developing. So if you were to ask for a wish to the government or to the regulator to accelerate the electrification of mobility, what would your wish be? What would you ask for? Like I said earlier, some of the elements that can facilitate the development and transition to electric mobility are, firstly, having access to electric vehicles. And for that, the prices of an electric vehicle needs to come closer to that of traditional vehicles. So the wish I would ask to the government is to perhaps reduce the value-added tax of cars. I think that would be the solution. Maybe through a tax waiver or a tax exemption, because we have seen it work in other countries. I think that would encourage people to purchase electric cars. In the meantime, we have the Moves 3, which is a government program, and it gives grants to accompany the purchase of a vehicle. First, of course, you have to purchase a car, then you have to do some paperwork and show your invoice, and then you get the grant. That has a lot of procedures involved. It would be easier to have a tax reduction, but in any case, we have that program. It'll be active until 2023 with some 400 million euros to help finance the access to electric vehicles. Then, another wish would be to improve the infrastructure for charging vehicles, and this government plan is offering financial aid to improve the infrastructure and the charging points. That way, electric vehicles will be more autonomous each time, and they will be able to charge faster. Those are the basic elements to guarantee the transition. So I would like to ask the government to maintain and improve the measures to access cars, to keep them affordable, and then to keep giving us grants for infrastructure. And perhaps the most important thing that would be left would be having access or finding recharging points in public places. Sometimes it can be very difficult to find a place to develop a charging point. From the point we find a good location and get into talks and negotiations with, I don't know, the shopping center or the establishment there to where we are able to install the charging point, 2 years might go by. Why? Well, because the City Hall needs to grant licenses and permissions, and the distributing companies have to interact as well. In the liberalized market, I am, or my company is marketer, a commercializer of electricity, and we have to operate through another agent. Then we have to request the autonomous communities to approve the project. And finally, we need to set it up and open it for service. We are already suggesting or giving some ideas to the government on how we can expedite those procedures. So hopefully in future years, we'll be able to install public charging points. This is like the tip of the iceberg. There are some points, charging points that are already operative. And they're the tip of the iceberg of all the other points that are a work in progress. So if we hadn't done all of this work, and if the work was quicker, we would see the infrastructure ready to serve. Because you have an objective, right? Yes, our goal is 150,000. But I think we will have to revise that. Our new official goal that we have communicated is to set up 150,000 recharging points by the end of 2024 with an associated investment of 150 million euros. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we have to end here because we have to leave the room. Our partners have to come in and disinfect the room. I'm very sorry to interrupt, but thank you for sharing this dialogue with us. Thanks to Carlos Vergara, responsible for Smart Mobility of Iberdrola, and Carlos, Mobility Director of Ferrovial. I would just like to remind you that our strategic partner is Democratest. They are guaranteeing our health and safety, and thanks to them, we can have this 3-day event in strict adherence to COVID protocols. So I would like to ask you all to please leave the room 5 minutes. Please don't go far. Our partners are going to proceed to the sanitation of the room, and then we can come back and continue our work. Thank you.